Ladies and gentlemen, let me talk to you for a moment because there's something powerful that happens when a man can't stop thinking about a woman. And I don't mean thinking about her casually. I don't mean a late night thought that fades by morning. I'm talking about when she gets in his mind and refuses to leave, when she shows up in his quiet moments, when she becomes the thought behind his silence. When a man's focus changes, his entire world starts shifting in ways even he doesn't fully understand. See, focus is not something a man gives lightly. A man can desire many things, admire many women, be attracted to beauty everywhere he looks, but focus is different. Focus is intentional, and when it locks onto one woman, it reveals where his heart is quietly settling. When a man can't stop thinking about a woman, his attention begins to drift toward her without effort. He doesn't plan it. It just happens. His mind starts replaying conversations, remembering her expressions, wondering what she's doing, how she's feeling, and whether she's okay. Even when he's busy, even when life is loud, there she is, sitting in the background of his thoughts like a constant signal he can't turn off. A focused man starts making decisions differently. He may not announce it. He may not even admit it to himself at first. But suddenly he's more careful with his time. He starts choosing peace over chaos, meaning over momentary pleasure. The things that once distracted him don't hold the same power because his attention has found something that feels deeper, calmer, and more real. That's how you know it's serious, when the noise of the world fades and one woman's presence becomes louder than everything else combined. That kind of focus doesn't come from lust, it comes from connection. When a man is focused on a woman, his discipline increases. He starts holding himself to a higher standard, not because she demanded it, but because her existence in his life inspires it. He wants to be sharper, better, more stable. He doesn't want to disappoint her, even if she never asked for anything. Focus creates accountability, and accountability creates growth. A man who once moved carelessly begins to move with intention. His actions become measured. His words carry more weight. He becomes more aware of how he shows up because now someone important is watching, even if she's not in the room. Focus also exposes vulnerability. When a man's attention belongs to one woman, he starts noticing how much her reactions matter to him. Her approval feels different. Her disappointment hits harder. Her smile stays with him longer than he expects. That's when he realizes she has access to parts of him he didn't plan on opening. And that realization can be unsettling because focus creates attachment, and attachment creates emotional risk. But here's the truth. Men don't focus on what they don't value. If his mind keeps returning to her, it's because she represents something his soul recognizes as rare. A focused man becomes protective, not possessive, but protective. He guards the connection because he understands its value. He doesn't want interference, confusion, or careless mistakes ruining something that feels meaningful. His focus sharpens his instincts. He becomes more patient, more observant, more intentional in how he interacts with her. That's how you know a man is no longer just interested, he's invested, Because when a man's focus belongs to a woman, his heart has already followed, and everything he does from that point forward begins to reflect it. When a man becomes emotionally attached to a woman, his inner world begins to change in ways he never planned and rarely admits out loud. Emotional attachment is not loud for a man. It's quiet, private, and deeply personal. It starts the moment her presence affects his peace. Her words begin to linger. Her absence feels heavier than it should. Things that never used to bother him suddenly matter. That's because once a woman touches a man emotionally, she's no longer just someone he likes. She becomes someone who influences how he feels about himself and his life. A man doesn't easily surrender emotional control. He's trained to manage, suppress, and compartmentalize his feelings, but emotional attachment breaks through those walls slowly and persistently. He starts caring in ways that surprise him. He checks his phone more often, not because he's desperate, but because he's hoping he pays attention to her tone, her mood, her energy, because her emotional state begins to matter to him. If she's happy, he feels lighter. If she's distant, something feels off. Even if everything else in his life is going well, once attachment forms, a man's priorities begin to shift. He starts rearranging his schedule, his habits, even his goals, without consciously deciding to do so. He makes room for her, not just physically, but emotionally. He listens more closely. He remembers small details he used to overlook. He becomes more present in conversations, more thoughtful in his responses. That's not strategy. That's emotional investment. A man who is emotionally attached is no longer operating on impulse. He's operating on care. Emotional attachment also brings vulnerability, and that's where the internal conflict begins. He wants to stay strong, but he also wants to stay connected. He doesn't want to appear weak, but he doesn't want to lose her either. So he struggles quietly. He may pull back at times, not because he doesn't care, but because he cares more than he's comfortable admitting. Emotional attachment makes a man aware that he has something to lose, and that awareness can be intimidating. As attachment deepens, a man begins to protect the connection. He becomes cautious with his actions and his words because he understands that what he has is fragile. He's more selective about who he lets influence him. He distances himself from situations that could jeopardize the bond. He doesn't want chaos where he's found peace. Emotional attachment teaches a man responsibility, not because someone demanded it, but because his heart has chosen it. When a man is emotionally attached to a woman, he starts seeing her as part of his future, even if he hasn't put language to it yet. He imagines her reactions, considers her feelings, and measures his choices against the impact they might have on her. That's when attachment turns into depth, because a man doesn't emotionally attach unless a woman has reached a place in him that feels safe, meaningful, and irreplaceable. And once she's there, his inner world is never quite the same again. When fear enters a man's heart, it doesn't announce itself loudly. It doesn't come in the form of panic or weakness. It arrives quietly, disguised as caution, hesitation, and deep thought. When a man can't stop thinking about a woman, fear shows up not because he doubts her, but because he recognizes her value. Fear is born the moment he realizes that losing her would cost him something he may never find again. And that realization changes how he moves through the world. A man who feels nothing has nothing to protect, but a man who feels deeply becomes aware of risk. He starts weighing his actions more carefully. He thinks before he speaks. He replays moments in his head, wondering if he said the wrong thing or missed an opportunity to show up better. That's fear at work, not the kind that paralyzes, but the kind that sharpens awareness. He doesn't want to make mistakes because mistakes now feel expensive. One wrong move could create distance, and distance is what he fears most. This fear forces a man to confront his own limitations. He begins to see where he falls short, where his habits could cost him the woman occupying his thoughts. He notices his impatience, his pride, his emotional avoidance. And for the first time, those flaws bother him, not because someone criticized him, but because he understands what's at stake. Fear pushes him toward growth. It challenges him to become more consistent, more honest, more emotionally available than he's ever been before. As fear deepens, a man becomes protective of the connection. He doesn't want unnecessary interference. He guards the bond from outside noise, from careless opinions, from situations that could cause misunderstandings. He becomes selective about who he listens to because not everyone understands the value of what he's building. This protection isn't about control, it's about preservation. He knows how rare it is to find someone who feels like home, and he doesn't want to mishandle that gift. Fear also awakens a sense of responsibility. A man begins to realize that his presence or absence matters. His consistency matters. His effort matters. He understands that love isn't just about feeling, but about showing up even when it's uncomfortable. That awareness pushes him toward commitment. Even if he's not ready to say the word out loud, he starts thinking long term, imagining consequences, considering futures that include her in them. At its core, fear is the proof of depth. A man doesn't fear losing what he never valued. Fear only exists when something precious is on the line. When a man can't stop thinking about a woman and fear enters his heart, it's because she has touched a part of him that feels irreplaceable. That fear reshapes him, disciplines him, and guides his actions. It turns careless men into cautious ones, distant men into intentional ones, and uncertain men into men who finally understand what they stand to lose and what they must do to keep it. When a man begins to protect what he values, it shows up in his behavior long before it shows up in his words. Protection is instinctive. It isn't something a man announces or performs. It's something he lives. When a woman becomes important to him, his mindset shifts from casual involvement to careful stewardship. He starts treating the connection as something fragile and rare, something that requires intention. This kind of protection doesn't come from jealousy or control. It comes from respect and recognition. He understands that what he has is meaningful, and meaningful things deserve to be guarded. A man who is protective becomes more aware of his environment. He notices who has access to her, who influences her, and what affects her peace, not because he wants ownership, but because he wants safety, emotional, mental, and sometimes